The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. At that time, Jesus came to Jericho and intended to pass through the town. Now a man there named Zacchaeus, who was a chief tax collector and also a wealthy man, was seeking to see who Jesus was. But he could not see him because of the crowd, for he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree in order to see Jesus, who was about to pass that way. When he reached the place, Jesus looked up and said, "Zacchaeus, come down quickly, for today I must stay at your house." And he came down quickly and received him with joy. When they all saw this, they began to grumble, saying, "He has gone to stay at the house of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Behold, half of my possessions, Lord, I shall give to the poor. And if I have extorted anything from anyone, I shall repay it 4 times over." And Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a descendant of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save what was lost." The Gospel of the Lord. Jesus is constantly calling people to a deeper conversion, constantly inviting people, giving them a grace to seek Him, to encounter Him, to know Him. But then it's up to the individual to act upon that invitation, on that grace. And we see in Zacchaeus that that was exactly the case. Zacchaeus was the chief tax collector. He was a big sinner, if you will. Tax collectors back then, they were corrupt. They would extort people. They would take more money than necessary and would pocket the money. So they were notorious sinners. And he was a wealthy man too. So he was materialistic, selfish, right? And so he was a big sinner. Yet Jesus calls him. He doesn't give up on him. He's calling Zacchaeus to conversion. And he gives him the grace. It's a subtle grace to seek him, to see what he's like. And so Zacchaeus acts upon this invitation. But we see that there are obstacles. There are obstacles. When he's trying to seek Jesus, there are obstacles. First, it's the crowd. It's the crowd. It's this big crowd that's preventing him from seeing Jesus. So he has, and secondly, it's a personal obstacle because he's a short man. He's probably not that short, but he's a short man, right? And so he has to overcome 2 obstacles. One is a societal obstacle. One is a personal obstacle. He has to overcome these obstacles in order to see Jesus. And he is determined. He doesn't give up. He's determined to see Jesus. What does he do? He runs ahead of the crowd. This is taking a big chance because running for a grown man back in those days, that's shameful. That's silly. People don't do that. It's not dignified. But does he care? No, he doesn't care. He goes against societal expectations. He doesn't care what other people think of him. Even if he looks ridiculous, he doesn't care. He's determined to overcome this obstacle. So he runs ahead. And not only does he run, but what else does he do? He climbs a sycamore tree. Again, this is not dignified for a grown man to be climbing a tree. Little kids can be running around and climbing trees, but for a grown man, this is not dignified. This is ridiculous. But he doesn't care. He goes against society's expectations. He goes against the grain. He takes a chance. He doesn't care if he looks foolish in the eyes of others. He's determined, courageous to see Jesus. And so he does. So likewise with us, every time Jesus invites someone to seek him, someone who's mired in sin, someone who is far from him, to seek him, there are obstacles. First of all, there could be social obstacles. Perhaps they're in a family that's not Christian, that's not Catholic. And so that takes a big chance to start going to church, to start seeking Jesus if your family are not believers. And maybe friends. Maybe your friends don't practice. So no one wants to be the odd one out, right? So you're going against the grain, going against the people around you. They become an obstacles. Maybe it's society. Maybe it's your profession, where you work. People don't believe. People don't practice. So you have to go against the grain. You have to overcome that social obstacle in order to see Jesus. I know of a woman who comes to me and she says that her husband is not a Catholic. He doesn't believe. He promised when they got married to raise the children in the faith and to go to Mass with her. And he did for a little while, but then he stops. And now he doesn't believe. And the children won't go to Mass because their father doesn't go to Mass, right? And she feels bad for going to Mass, right? And because they make her feel shameful for going to Mass, but she does anyway. She has to overcome this big family obstacle in order to see Jesus. And so when they do, they are rewarded abundantly. And we see this with Zacchaeus. All he wanted to do was to see Jesus, see what he looks like. But he receives so much more. Jesus stops, looks up, and calls him by name. Zacchaeus, come down quickly. Today I must stay at your house. Right? What a surprise. All he wanted to do was see Jesus. Now Jesus talks to him, invites him, and comes to his house. He encounters him. Right? He meets Jesus. He's invited to a relationship with Jesus, to know him, to be with him. And again, this is an invitation. An invitation. Jesus never forces himself on anybody. He invites him, come down. I want to come to your house. I want you to know me. Right? And what does he do? Does he come down? Yes, he comes down quickly and receives Jesus with joy. He responds fully to the grace. And then there's the fruits, the conversion, right? He knows Jesus, he encounters Jesus, and here he does a 180 conversion. Right? What does he do? He tells Jesus, Lord, half of my property I will give to the poor. And if I have extorted anything from anyone, I will repay them 4 times over. Right? The law back then required that you repay somebody twice over. But he goes above and beyond the law. Right? So he goes through a powerful conversion because of his willingness to respond to Jesus' invitation for a deeper relationship, for a deeper conversion. And I see this all the time. I see Jesus inviting people, but they hesitate. They hesitate. Sometimes they don't seek him, or sometimes they seek him, and Jesus invites them to come closer, to do more, to know him. But they hesitate. They don't act like Zacchaeus. They don't come down quickly. They don't receive Jesus with joy. They test the water, but then they back out, right? And then so they don't bear the fruits. They don't receive the reward. They don't go through a powerful conversion because of their hesitation, right? And so it's up to all of us, no matter where we are, what stage we are. Jesus is constantly calling us to a deeper conversion, to seek him, to know him, to be with him. And to continuously convert, to become like him, to become holy, to become perfect. But it's up to us, each and every one of us. He doesn't force himself upon us. And keep in mind, there are going to be obstacles, perhaps even personal obstacles. Perhaps you're tired. Perhaps a pride. Perhaps there's an emotional wound. Perhaps you had a bad experience with a priest. Right? Whatever it is, there are obstacles that may be keeping you from coming to Jesus and receiving him fully with joy. But you have to overcome that obstacle. Remember, there will be obstacles, but it's up to us to be courageous, to go against society, to go against other people's expectations. It's not easy, but Jesus gives us the grace. We have to be courageous and determined in order to receive the fruits and the gifts. So as we receive the Eucharist today, let us give thanks to Jesus for constantly calling us to conversion, to know him, to encounter him, to love him. And let us ask for the grace to respond fully like Zacchaeus, to not be afraid of what others may think, to seek to be determined, to see Jesus, to know him, to love him, and to become like him.